Hello again from Stuttgart. Hello. Hi there. It is I once again. And great news. The first part worked. I've tried so many times to make this video over the last several weeks, and for one reason or another, dead battery, the memory card filled up, I got interrupted by people at work here. Just, it just never panned out. And it worked. So the first part of this two-part video is done, and it's currently down on my laptop trying to be exported onto a format that I can upload to YouTube. I think that's working. Again, as this video will also attest, I am not technologically savvy, but I think it's good news. So, what this video is, in case you haven't watched part one, I'm going to very briefly review part one, and then get right to it in this video. And what essentially this video is a practical way that you can prepare to transcend the coming chaos. By coming chaos, I mean, which I'll again briefly review in a moment, the American society is approaching collapse. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen in 100 years or 1 year, but sometime between 1 and 100 years, it's probably going to happen, and I'm betting it happens sooner rather than later. And when it collapses, it's going to be, who knows how it's going to be, but it's not going to be pleasant, okay? And so it is prudent, indeed responsible of us, when we are presented with the knowledge that it is coming imminently, right? It is on the doorstep, this decay, rapid decay of the societal fabric. When we know this is coming, it is prudent and kind and responsible of us to prepare. So I talk a little bit about that in more detail in part one. But most importantly, we come to this video, which is a detailed way that you and yours can create a life that will sneak past the oligarchy, okay? That will allow you to live a life of high quality and great service to your unprepared friends and relatives and neighbors, and the oligarchy, right under the oligarchy's nose. Okay, in essence, a way that you can construct a life with some effort, but not an inordinate amount of effort, but with some effort, you can construct a life now that no matter what happens in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, no matter how bad it gets, you will be able to pierce the darkness and come out the other side as a viable community, ready to then build anew, because it's going to take some rebuilding once it crashes, okay? Even if it only crashes a little bit. And I must also say, even if this theory, which is pretty well backed up by a lot of evidence that's piling on right now, it is a very reasonable theory, even if it's wrong, even if we keep bebopping along with this bizarre society in America that we have now for the next 200 years, it is still to your advantage to do these things that these two videos are showing you, especially the ones that I'm going to show you in this video, okay? So, again, apologize for the unusual camera work and the fact that I don't know how to edit videos. So just imagine this is a live stream and try to have fun with how poorly I work with the camera, okay? So I'm going to move the camera now, so if you get seasick, you might want to close your eyes. I'm going to set it up over here and review very quickly what I talked about in the first video. Okay? Hold that thought. Hang on. So let's put you here. Let's put you here. Let's give a little zoom. And let's see what we can do here. That looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. So, hello. What I talked about in the first video was what most Americans think their country is, what their country actually is, what that means for the near future, what's probably going to happen, and the first part of what we can start doing now to do about it, to prepare for that imminent, rather unpleasant transition, and of course, a way to, in this video, how to build a fabric, a new fabric of your lives that will help you smooth sail through a lot of the trauma to come. Okay? So, what most Americans think their country is a democracy, which is represented by this graph. All these colors of different political parties. You got your Trump, you got your Hillary, you got your I hate Trump, so I'm voting for Hillary, even though I don't like her. You got your I hate Hillary, so I'm voting for Trump, even though I don't like him. You got your Gary Johnson, Libertarians. You got your Green Party, Jill Steins. You got all these other very small third parties here in blue, all sorts of different parties. And then you got your people who just don't care or have given up or just don't vote. Okay? No political affiliation. Right. And in theory, you cast your vote and you get representation. In a democracy, it's proportionate. Your vote counts as one vote. In a republic, which is what the Electoral College makes America hypothetically into, you cast a vote in the hopes that your candidate wins and then represents you. It's a winner-take-all system. But it's still technically democratic. Your vote still technically counts, right? And yet, as I pointed out in the last video, as Princeton University and others have pointed out, there is no more correlation between the wishes of the public, of the voting public, and the votes cast, and what actually becomes law, what actually becomes public policy. No correlation at all. But there is a correlation between how much money gets invested in political campaigns by corporations and millionaires and what they want those politicians to do and what becomes law. That's called oligarchy. So this is what you've been conned into believing your country still is. And as now WikiLeaks has pretty conclusively pointed out, and as much of the other research that I also will link at the bottom of this video, like I linked at the bottom of the first video, has proven, it really is an oligarchy. So instead of this, which is what they want you to believe it is, so they will distract you into fighting politically as opposed to focusing on the true problem, which is the elite abusing their power and trampling on the rights of the little man and woman. What we actually have is this. This is the reality of America. America is an oligarchy. The 1% run the show. The politicians are used by multimillionaires and corporations to employ the military and the media to effectuate law and public policy that gives more wealth and more power, more and more and more and more, to less and less people. And then the 99% only get what they want by accident or most often not at all. Okay? Example of this, public health care. Only country in the world, developed country, with no real public health care. Only one. Everybody wants it. But they won't get it because the insurance companies, among other massive corporate entities, conglomerates, have paid the politicians not to pass it. Right? Insurance company make big, big money. Everyone in America very, very sick, and hopefully not, because if you get sick, you're in trouble, because either you go bankrupt trying to go to the hospital or you can't go at all, right? That's just an example of oligarchy. So this is what oligarchy does, and this is how it is. This is the reality. Now, if you don't believe this, and you want to keep believing in this, just turn her off, and on you go, and I wish you well, and when it does hit the fan, please, I will help you as best I can. I probably can't, but I'll try, yeah? I'm not trying to push you away. I'm just saying if you don't believe this truth and don't believe the evidence that I've linked in the comment box, in the box below, yeah? And you believe this and you want to keep believing that you can make change politically, okay, then you can save your time and you can go and enjoy your day other ways, and I wish you a peaceful day. But if you have accepted that this is the truth, yeah, you need to know that it's going to end in a collapse. Oligarchy always ends in a collapse. It consolidates power to such a crystallized, concentrated fashion that society crumbles, yeah? And it collapses. There's no more reason, there's no one left to exploit. So then the oligarchical rulers start exploiting each other, and then often the people try to rise up. Bad idea these days. Don't do it, Texas. Don't do it. The militarized police will make mincemeat of any violent revolution, and even if that revolution wins, it will just make a Texas-sized one of these. Don't do it. So society is headed for collapse. Revolution is not an option. Transcendence is an option. And as I pointed out at the very end of the last video, transcendence, which is what this series is about, practical ways that you can survive and indeed thrive before and during this collapse time, which is starting right now. In America, the collapse is starting right now. It might not get acute for the next 20 years, maybe more, but it is going to be uncomfortable starting right now. Specifically in 9 days, once Hillary, probably Hillary, is installed on the throne. Maybe she's going to get impeached and Tim Kaine's going to come in. Maybe somebody else is going to, but it doesn't matter. Oh, look at that. I guess this is the last video. This is going to take over, and it's going to get pretty gross and uncomfortable. But you can transcend. So as I pointed out in the last video, it's the 3 Ps. Prepare, which is get basic food, water, and warmth. Solar panels best, but if you can't do that, a bunch of white unscented candles. Not necessarily, primarily to ease this base level of fear that we all feel inside of ourselves. Because we've been taught to believe, which is true in oligarchies, if you don't have money, you can't buy food and you die. Right? We don't speak to our neighbors anymore, right? We don't have our own gardens, we don't grow our own food. 75% of our tap water in the United States is tainted with heavy metals. Sheesh, what are we going to do? And that fear is used to keep us under control. But if you have foodstuffs and water and candles, warmth and light in your basement, a lot of it, enough not only for you, but to help your neighbors, we're thinking communally now, to help your neighbors in a crisis, automatically you are at ease, and this patent underlying buzz of fear is gone. As opposed to thinking, oh crap, I'm in trouble. If it hits the fan tomorrow, you think, okay, no matter what happens, I'm good for a month, right? So that kind of sets you at ease, right? That enables you and empowers you to do this, which is what it's about. A 2-level plan of attack, right? And if you want to do both of these, you can. If you only want to do this one, you can. And if you only want to do this one, you can. But one of these two, if not both, you've got to start doing. This is protest. I talked about it at length in the last video. You want to protest the injustice of the oligarchy. You want the protest to be relatively silent, well-organized, peaceful, and consequent. You want to buckle down and make sure it's very visible, very disturbing to the oligarchy, so that the police will come and will not be inspired to beat on you, but they will be forced to arrest you. 2 reasons. One, it's extremely powerful to witnesses, and you inspire other people to join the movement. Some of those witnesses being the police officers and the bureaucrats and the low-level politicians themselves. You want to wake as many people up to the fact that they need to join the right side, get on the right team. Team compassion, team community, team humanity, not team money and team oligarchy and team corruption, okay? The other thing is, just like Aragorn did at the end of Lord of the Rings, it's the best analogy, you know, you gather all your forces and take them to the Black Gate. Not to win, not to change the system with your protest, but you want the oligarchy focusing here while, and this is the source of this video, while other people are doing this, which is developing proactive interdependence. Now here's how this works. I'm going to be very brief, and I don't need to go into too much detail because the specifics of this are up to each of you. You can build these little mini communities however you want, but they all need to follow a certain set of basic skeletal foundational points, okay? You need to work, the goal is self-sustainability, okay? You want to develop a community of households, 5 to 12 households, within a mile of each other. Okay? They don't need to be next door neighbors. But you need to very subtly and very quietly and very calmly seek out like-minded people who are ready to exit and develop real community. It can be as little as 5 households, maybe even 4. Ideally, you'd want to find 12 households. In this little diagram, it's 9. Okay? Right? The goal would be self-sustainability, meaning you would plant gardens. You would all invest and make solar power or wind power a priority. You would pool your resources, right, so that many of you could quit your jobs. If you have 12 households, you're only going to need 5 to 6 adults with jobs if you do this right. And everyone else can quit their jobs and start working full-time for the community, right? The next point is, so you would also want to develop ways of capturing and purifying rainwater, right? Or spring water if you have a spring, or well water, okay? So you want to develop your own gardens for your own food as much as possible, right? Just as much as possible. Ideally 100% self-sustainable, but just go in that direction. Food, water, and power. Those 3. This needs to be silent. You do not want to let the oligarchy know you're doing this, okay? In fact, it's extremely important that the oligarchy does not know you're doing this because they will stop you. If people start doing this, the oligarchy has no more food. It needs fear and it needs money. It needs resources, food and money. And if it doesn't have those, it doesn't have your money or your fear or your resources, right? It starts to die faster, right? So if it finds people, and you'll see evidence of this, you'll see people who are trying to get off the grid where they are then fined by these obscure zoning codes and brought back into the grid. That's why you do it silently. You don't tell anyone you're doing it. The households in your communal bubble, I call this a communal bubble, right? Maybe some are 300 yards away, maybe some are next door neighbors, maybe some are just over here about a mile away. You all know who you are. You communicate face to face, very little email, certainly no email talking about the bubble, right? Regularly walk and meet with each other face to face, real community. You help each other in a crisis. If any of you need food, you share your food, you share your water, you share your power, right? Your electric power, if it gets down to it, right? And if the oligarchy ever does try to crunch down on one of you, you're already ready to absorb those people as much as necessary, the basic needs, into the bubble, right? Okay? So that's what the silent part is. You don't tell anybody you're doing this, right? The only people who know are the people in your bubble, okay? In your self-sustainable bubble. Once you get that established, one of your goals is you serve your community. You don't have to tell your community you're in a bubble, but you're going to have extra food and you go give that to someone who's hungry. You're going to have extra water. You give that to someone who's thirsty. You encourage other people also, once you're developed enough, maybe to start their own bubbles. You don't tell anyone who's in your bubble, but you go and you tell people about self-sustainability and you ask them if they've developed it and you give them this idea and say, you know, here's what I've heard someone's doing. This might be for you. And you would let this idea spread. So ideally you'd have bubbles popping up everywhere. And maybe one family is a link, is like a diplomatic link to another one of the bubbles so they could be interconnected. That's way on down the road. But the most important part is you develop an as close to 100% self-sustainable community of like-minded, co-caring households that will remove all of your dependence on the oligarchy. There is technically then no more need for any politician. You don't need to vote anymore. You don't need to worry about what ordinance is going to happen or crack down on you, right? You live a peaceful, service-oriented, fruitful, healthy life where you and yours provide for you and yours and serve your community, okay? And no matter what then happens with the collapse of the oligarchy, no matter if it collapses radically and horrifically or if it collapses gradually and uncomfortably, like it is now, yeah? You will be able to live a healthy, fruitful life. And once the oligarchy has collapsed, which it will be there to help, as leaders of the community, to help rebuild how it needs to be rebuilt. This is the long-term salvation of humanity. Something like this. Otherwise, we're just going to keep doing the same crap. We're going to keep collapsing through revolution or just collapsing, and we're just going to keep building more and more of these. And we're going to keep going through these cycles of destitution and poverty and disease and war and persecution, right? And incarceration of the innocent. I mean, the incarceration in the United States is just horrific because the oligarchy feeds off the slave labor, right? Thanks for that, Bill Clinton. Nice. And so you don't want to keep doing this cycle. To exit this cycle, you have to do it yourself. No politician is going to do it for you. The politicians are invested in this cycle, and they will be invested in making a new one of these. Okay? You become the leader of your community. You create your own community. You create your own country, in essence, that is only a mile radius big, a little bubble. You don't have to name it. You don't need any currency because there is no currency needed, right? Ideally, you'd be completely self-sustainable, but if you're not, that's okay. You can easily, working together, knock down 80 to 90% of your money needs. And the 4 to 5 people who still have jobs will provide more than enough money to the community to provide for whatever money needs there are that are left over. Okay? Okay. So, that's it. That's it. That's really important information, I think. Now, I don't know how many people are actually going to, I'll leave this up because it's a pretty color of green, and it's a reminder of the crap bucket we're in right now. Okay? This is a problem. This is not going to go backwards. Oligarchies do not grow backwards. You don't go from democracy to republic to oligarchy and then back to democracy again. It doesn't work that way. Right? It never has, and it will not. Okay? And yet this is a solution. You know, and while we're getting to here, do a lot of this. Right? Get some justice done. Fight for some justice. Wake some people up. Let them join the crew. Let them have meaningful lives. And maybe talk to them and see if they're interested in building their own one of these. Because the more people get involved in this, the quicker the oligarchy will collapse and allow for rebuilding a much more harmonious, indeed a sound and just society thereafter. And the more people that are involved in this, these are people who will not be suffering no matter what happens with the oligarchy. They will have transcended the majority of the suffering. And they'll be ready to help people who are not prepared to suffer less. Right? Okay? So that's it. That's pretty much the most important thing I've ever shared with anybody. Certainly in relation to the current situation in the world right now. And for the very, I shouldn't say for the very small portion of you that will put this into practice. Maybe I'm selling you short. Maybe a lot of you will put this into practice. But for those who do put it into practice, humanity thanks you in advance. And I'm happy for you because you're going to live much more fruitful and productive and compassionate and happy-filled lives. Which we humans, we should all have that, you know? And if we start learning how to care for each other while caring for our own communities, we'll get there. We can get there, no matter what the oligarchy does. Okay? All right, so I feel good about that. Any questions, you can email me at rediscoveringpeace@gmail.com. You can also go to my Facebook page, SCAUGHD, as in Dora, T. I'm pretty much the last name I-A-M, just because I had to give a last name. I'm the only one on there. My profile's wide open. You can message me there if you have any ideas or comments or questions. And that's about it. I hope this video worked too. And if it did, I'll go down and put it up online and we'll see what good it can do. Love you guys. Peace out. Bye-bye.